So how should India react? How do we navigate the shifting tides of power and security in an uncertain world? From grand strategy to military technology, from power and conflict to the unseen forces shaping our world, and from battlefields to the halls of power. We decode the past, analyze the present, and anticipate the future of global security. I'm Sandeep Unnithan, and this is the National Security Agenda. On the 11th of March this year, the Baloch Liberation Army hijacked a train with over 450 passengers in it. A majority of those passengers were Pakistan Army soldiers. Now, it took the Pakistan security forces over 48 hours to lift the siege, killing 35 militants. 27 hostages were killed by the BLA. Now, that train hijacking was a threshold. A threshold has been crossed in Balochistan because since then, Balochistan, that's Pakistan's most restive province, has been on fire. There have been over half a dozen attacks across the province in just the last 2 days. Political activists have been detained and there are widespread allegations of torture and repression. What's next for Balochistan? Joining me now are Colonel Nikhil Apte and my colleague Aditya Kaul. Gentlemen, welcome to the National Security Agenda. Aditya, bring us to speed on the current situation in Balochistan. It's been 2 weeks since that sensational train hijacking. What's the situation on the ground right now? Is it as bad as we think it is?
Well, it's pretty bad if we speak about it. In the last 24 hours alone, there have been 12 different incidents where, in fact, not just the Baloch Liberation Army, but different other resistance groups have acted against the Pakistani deep state, particularly attacking the Pakistani army soldiers, the frontier corps, setting a fire to different equipment, and apart from that, holding blockades as well. In fact, March 27, today, is very significant because today is the day where the Baloch rebels say that the Pakistan illegally occupied using force in 1948 Balochistan, and in fact, they treat this day as a black day every year. Apart from there, there's another incident that has happened. Maharang Baloch, Samidin Baloch are two of the most active and well-known Baloch activists. In fact, Maharang Baloch has also been, nominated for the Nobel Prize for Peace this year. And, there have been massive protests that they have led over the last few years, but particularly in the last few days. Now, for the last 48 hours to 72 hours, Maharang Baloch and Samidin Baloch have been arrested. Even though there are bail orders, even though there are orders from the court that they should meet family members, the Pakistan Army, the deep state, and the local law enforcement are not allowing them to. There are blockades that have happened all across 12 districts of Balochistan in the last 24 hours, and the situation seems to be going south completely. And it's almost clear that Pakistan Army and its presence in Balochistan seems to be weakening. Now, I'm not saying that overnight there will be some kind of a solution or the BLA will be victorious, but the resistance forces, the rebels, are continuously mounting pressure on the deep state, on the ISI and the army. And the narrative, if the overall narrative is concerned, the Pakistan Army, the Frontier Corps, and the Pakistan state as a whole seems to be, not just being weakening, but does not seem to have any kind of a response to such massive threats that are coming in. The so-called unknown gunmen seem to be victorious as of now across Balochistan.
Absolutely. The Pakistan Army's grip seems to be weakening on Balochistan. That's a takeaway from Aditya Kaul's assessment of the situation on the ground and the fact that the situation seems to be going south in Balochistan. Colonel Apte, you've been tracking Balochistan very closely as well. It's often compared to Bangladesh. In fact, we call it Bangladesh 2.0 at times. You believe that a tipping point has been reached in Balochistan with these attacks? And as Aditya just said, that the Pakistan military simply doesn't seem to have an answer for all these mass attacks across the province.
So, Sandeep, I would say that they are completely different. While we would like to believe that Balochistan may lead to Bangladesh 2.0, but in my opinion, it's very unlikely. Look at the geography of the entire situation. Bangladesh was surrounded by three sides by India and the Bay of Bengal in the south, isolated from all sides, allowed Indian Army, Indian government, helping Mukti Bahini and then launching conventional operations for liberation. Balochistan is different. To its west is Iran, to its north is Afghanistan, to its northeast is erstwhile Fata, which is now called Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and to its east is Sindh. Now, Balochistan is well ensconced within the Pakistani state. To its south is Arabian Sea, and there is no way that there could be a direct intervention, military intervention by India into Balochistan. Whatever has to be done through proxies of Iran and Afghanistan. So purely from a geographic or political geography point of view, they are very different. The second aspect I would like to highlight is the terrain and the economy of the place. Bangladesh was always the most fertile part of East India. It was at a time, close to the power center of East India Company. And even now it is, the GDP of Bangladesh is very high compared to what is compared in Balochistan. Balochistan is mostly arid. It does have natural resources, gas, oil, all that. But then it's mostly arid, it's more very desert-like, and it's unlikely to function independently as a state. It'll probably remain a rentier state like, say, Afghanistan or even to that extent Iran. So they are very two different aspects geographically. Third aspect would be the population. Population of Bangladesh at the time of its liberation was more than West Pakistan. Balochistan is the most sparsely populated state or unit of Pakistan. And lastly, the cultural integration of Balochistan is much closer to Pakistan over the last 75, 80 years compared to what Bangladesh was. A different language, different culture, different way of living life. Balochis are more tribal, they have more closer alliances to their tribes, Buktis, Mengals, so on. And these tribes on their own have different alliances to different towards Punjab or against Punjab. So I don't think it's a fair apples to orange. It's a apples to oranges comparison to think that Balochistan might become a Bangladesh 2.0.
Apples and oranges comparison, indeed, Balochistan is not Bangladesh, as Colonel Apte said. But Aditya, the other big story coming out of Pakistan right now is the fact that the Chinese, who have got major investments in Pakistan, have begun to deploy private military contractors on the ground in Sindh to guard their projects. What's the meaning of this? You've been tracking this story as well, the fact that China is deeply concerned about its investments in Pakistan, especially in Balochistan and Sindh.
10 years ago, Sandeep, there was a lot of hue and cry. More than 10 years ago, in fact, when the CPEC really came into existence, and a lot of questions were being raised at what will India do. But as of now, the Chinese seem to have lost trust in the Pakistan army, in the ISI, in the Pakistani security establishment as to whether they will be able to provide any kind of security. With massive attacks that have taken place, not just in Balochistan, but in Karachi and other places, not just, usual attacks where a gunman comes and shoots, but there are suicide bombings targeting the Chinese engineers, Chinese teachers, etc. As you mentioned, Sindh. So in Karachi, we've seen frequently such attacks taking place in the last 2 to 3 years. In fact, women suicide bombers coming ahead and blowing up. So these are major security concerns that the Chinese has. They have invested a lot in the CPEC, in Gwadar port, in, mining a lot of natural resources across Balochistan, but there isn't any kind of a return on investment that is really coming in. To top it all, the concerns is also about the security of those Chinese engineers or domain experts who are down on ground trying to secure these projects for the Chinese. Of course, now China has, launched their own private security, just like the Americans have used in Afghanistan for years together, private contractors, etc. So this time around, the Chinese trying to, satisfy their security concerns by launching these private security contractors. But will this also really help in the overall picture where the Baloch rebels are, all guns blazing, not just against the Pakistan deep state, but the Chinese, remains to be seen. As of now, the security situation is going far worse, because remember, even those Baloch who are fence sitters are today on the streets. Right. Those who do not want to pick up the gun are protesting, are blockading roads for Maharang Baloch, for Samidin Baloch, for Lal Bahadur, for everybody who are using peaceful means of resistance against the Pakistani state. Now, these are people who haven't picked up gun, who haven't picked up or said that they do not believe in the Pakistani constitution. They've said that they will do everything under the domain of the Pakistani constitution. But not just these activists, several of the Pakistani journalists who have raised concerns on Balochistan situation have been picked up overnight and are missing for the last few days. So this is the situation in Pakistan. The only option for the Pakistan army right now is to launch a security operation. But how will they launch a security operation against the civilian population which is protesting for days together for enforced disappearances, more than 50,000 in number, that have continued?
Aditya, the fact that the Pakistan army could launch another op searchlight like they did in Bangladesh in 1971. But, Colonel Apte, what must India do in a scenario like this? What kind of contingency planning should we do to anticipate anything going further south in Balochistan?
I think, Sandeep, as they say, that never try to stop an adversary when they are, shooting themselves in the foot. So the best policy for India right now should be just to wait and watch. And whatever they are doing or not doing, they should continue doing that. Having said that, I think the most important thing coming out of Pakistan right now is the complete silence of polity on everything Balochistan. You have had General Asim Munir talking to the politicians and saying that Pakistan needs to become a hard state. Right. Now, hard state compared in response to what? Their own population or externally? And second issue is that who does benefit the most by undermining of Pakistan army? Now, if you look at these two things together, and you see that Pakistan polity has not made a whimper about what is happening in Balochistan, right, and the fact that Imran Khan, the most popular leader, continues to be in jail, I think this is well-cooked masala for Pakistan army to really, make a mash out of it. So I don't think we should do anything to stop Pakistan army from what it is doing. And if you go back traditionally, Pakistani generals are not known for their best negotiating practices or strategic thinking.
Right.
What it requires right now in Balochistan is parleys, negotiations, talks with their own people. How do you think the talks will happen? Asim Munir doesn't seem like a very sagacious general.
Right.
Now, how do you think talks are going to progress with a danda in one hand, a gun in the other hand, trying to quell a population?
Colonel Apte, that is something that he should learn from 1971. Well, like you said, Bangladesh, Balochistan might not be Bangladesh 2.0, but that's certainly the lessons of 1971 is, the Pakistan military didn't reach out to Mujibur Rahman, and they paid a very heavy price for that. And possibly that is the big lesson for the Pakistan military today when they're faced with this widespread protests and violence across Balochistan. But I'm afraid we're completely out of time today. Thank you very much for joining us, Aditya Kaul, and of course, Colonel Nikhil Apte. Lal Bahadur Shastri was India's second Prime Minister. He made significant contributions to the country despite having a very brief tenure of just 2 years, from 1964 to 1966. He was known for his simplicity, integrity and dedication. Now, he was Prime Minister at a crucial juncture. He provided decisive leadership when Pakistan attacked India in 1965. And separately, he also emphasized agricultural self-reliance by supporting the Green Revolution. He is known for the slogan, Jai Jawan Jai Kisan, long live the soldier, long live the farmer. Very appropriately so. Now, there's a new biography out on the former Prime Minister, written by a senior IAS officer, Dr Sanjeev Chopra, who was formerly director of the Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration, where India's civil servants are trained. He joins us now on National Security Agenda. Dr Chopra, welcome to the National Security Agenda. Dr Chopra, congratulations on this new biography on the second Prime Minister of India who hasn't got his due. But, tell us about Lal Bahadur Shastri in conflict. What was he like as a war Prime Minister when Pakistan attacked in 1965?
You see, some things just stand out. One was that there was a lot of consultation which he was doing, because we have to go back to 1962 and see, how with Jai Jawan, the new defense minister of the country, how the Indian forces were being calibrated all over again. So his responses, starting with the run of Kutch, because the run of Kutch was a bit of a precursor to the 65 main thing. So I think he was very clear about that. He was also very clear that the moment 5th August happened, in fact, a lot of people, it's important to understand that Pakistan had called the run-off catches Operation Desert Hawk. Then they were looking at Gibraltar. Gibraltar was what they started on 5th August. In fact, that's the reason why I think the Prime Minister Modi decided to reorganize Jammu and Kashmir on 5th August. So 5th August becomes an important date for us. And the idea was, that through Operation Gibraltar, there'll be just the infiltration that will happen. And then the idea was that after that, Pakistan expected there'll be some uprising, which did not happen at all. In fact, all the intruders were arrested, they were caught. Yes. And that was the time, when early on in August itself, Shashtri called a cabinet meeting. And in that cabinet meeting, the important thing to note is that all intelligence, all defense, all home ministry, all defense ministry officials were asked to be in attendance. Now, this is a big difference from the cabinet meetings or the non-existent policy formulation that was happening in 62. In 65, it was a very clear organization of the entire cabinet came together, and that's in fact what I've written, that the moment this happened, and let me quote from here, that the cabinet decided to take the following decisions unanimously. And this is very important. First, that India would not repeat the mistake of 1947 of approaching the UN Security Council. We were very clear, Shastri was very clear in his mind that, look, Pakistan is the aggressor. Pakistan was the aggressor in 1948 also. But in 1948, we decided that, we will accept the intermediation of the United Nations. This time we were very clear that, look, if Pakistan has attacked us, we're going to hit back with equal force, not just equal force, but with force. In Hindi, as they say, ईंट का जवाब पत्थर से देंगे. So that was the decision that was taken. And a clear message was sent to Pakistan.
Yes.
Sorry?
And the Indian army landed at the gates of Lahore. But I'm afraid we're completely out of time, Dr. Chopra. Just a quick question. What did Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri have to do with India's nuclear weapons program? It's a very interesting decade that he took over as PM. A shock defeat in 62. China testing its nuclear weapons in 1964, and you have a very brilliant scientist, Homi Bhabha, who's the father of India's nuclear weapons program. What role did Prime Minister Shastri have in building up our nuclear weapons program?
See, it was a very nuanced statement which Shastri made. Before that, the statement of India was that as far as atomic weapons is concerned, it will be kabhi nahi. Shastri ji changed it to abhi nahi, which meant that, look, if the push comes to shove, we are ready for it. So the first effort was to tell the non-aligned movement to prevail upon China to desist from nuclear weapons. But in case it did not, then Shastri did make that nuanced stand that if it is required, then India will not keep back. In fact, the implosion, the smiling Buddha of 1974 could not have happened unless the preparations were continuing and unless the preparations had been started in those times.
Absolutely. Hidden contribution of Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri, India's second Prime Minister, to India's nuclear weapons program, arguably one of our biggest technological breakthroughs. You can read more about that and other such inspiring details in Dr. Chopra's new book, The Great Conciliator, on our second Prime Minister. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Chopra. India has an engine problem, a serious one. Our warships are powered by gas turbines made by Ukraine and the United States. Our battle tanks are powered by engines made by Russia and Germany. Just last week, India signed a 2,000 crore contract with Russia to buy T-72 tank engines. But the bigger problem is in the air. Our fighter jets are powered by American engines and, of course, Russian engines. India's indigenous fighter jet, the light combat aircraft Tejas, is powered by the US GE 404 engines. Now, in 2021, India signed up to buy 99 GE F404 engines for over $700 million. Now, these engines were to be fitted into 83 LCA Mark 1A Tejas fighter jets being built by Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. HAL is India's only combat jet manufacturer. Now, the engines were to have started arriving in 2023, but they didn't arrive. The reason? The US manufacturers cited supply chain delays. The result? A 2-year delay in the delivery of these fighter jets to the Indian Air Force. And the IAF is already critically short of fighter jets. Now, the first of the F404 engines have started arriving from the US this month. And India has already signed up to buy more GE engines. The GE 414 engines will power the LCA Mark II and the AMCA 5th generation fighter aircraft. That's nearly all our future indigenous fighter acquisitions will be powered by US engines. Now, needless to say that delivery timelines for all of these aircraft will be decided by the arrival of these imported engines, because we are dependent on a foreign country for these engines. Now, with all of these countries, the US, Russia, Ukraine, either in a state of war or preparing for war, it would be extremely optimistic to believe they would prioritize India's requirements over their own. What's the solution then? Well, we need to build our own engines, whether it is for tanks, for warships or fighter jets. Of course, this is easier said than done, because engine technology is among the crown jewels of a nation's technological arsenal. No country parts with this technology very easily. But let's look at where India did it, where we cracked the technology conundrum despite several hurdles. India is among only 6 countries in the world to have developed its own nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarines. We built 4 such missile submarines, nuclear-powered submarines, including mastering the most challenging part, the nuclear reactor. We built it indigenously with some foreign assistance, but now we're completely self-sufficient when it comes to nuclear reactors. Now, we need to learn from our nuclear submarine project. We need to set up special all-of-government projects across services to master engine technology, be it in the land, be it in the air or at sea. Because without building our own engines, the idea of defense indigenization or Atmanirbhar Bharat will simply not take off. That's all for tonight. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time with more insights and analysis on the national security agenda.